In a quaint village nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering trees, there lived two men whose lives couldn't be more different. On one side of the dusty path lived poor man Peter, a humble soul with a heart as big as the sky above. And on the other side dwelled rich man Paul, his pockets overflowing with gold but his heart as cold as a winter's night. Now Peter's life wasn't easy. With a large family to feed and only a single cockerel to his name, he struggled to make ends meet. But despite his hardships, he never lost his gentle spirit or his unwavering love for his children. However, trouble brewed when Peter's cockerel, a colorful creature with a proud strut, developed a curious habit of wandering into Paul's lush yard. This didn't sit well with Paul, whose temper matched the fiery hue of his grand estate. Each time the cockerel strayed, Paul's fury grew, until one fateful day when he stormed over to Peter's humble abode. His face twisted in anger like a thundercloud ready to burst. "Peter," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the village. "Do something about that infernal cockerel of yours, or face the consequences." Peter's heart sank like a stone in a pond. He knew he had to find a solution, and fast. But what could he do? The options weighed heavily on his mind like a burden too heavy to bear. Should he kill the cockerel, robbing his children of their only feathered friend? Should he sell it, betraying the trust of a creature that had been his faithful companion? Or should he give it as a gift, hoping against hope for a miracle? As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the village, Peter made his decision. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, he gathered the cockerel in his arms and set off to see his master, hoping for a glimmer of mercy in the darkness. His master, a kind-hearted soul with a twinkle in his eye, listened to Peter's tale with a patient ear. And when Peter presented the cockerel as a gift, a smile spread across the master's face like the dawn breaking through the night. "Peter," he said, his voice soft as a gentle breeze, "you have shown great wisdom and kindness today. Let us roast this cockerel for dinner and celebrate your generosity." And so, as the savory aroma of roasting meat filled the air, Peter couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over him like a warm embrace. For in that moment, he knew that kindness and compassion would always triumph over greed and anger. Little did he know that his act of selflessness would set into motion a chain of events that would change his life and the lives of those around him forever. But for now, as he sat by the fire with his family, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope flicker in his heart like a flame refusing to be extinguished. As the savory aroma of roasting cockerel filled the air, Peter's mind was already buzzing with a plan. With practiced hands and a keen eye, he set to work, carving the bird with precision and care. He knew that presentation was key, especially when it came to impressing his master and securing a future for his family. With each slice of the knife, Peter considered his strategy. The plump breast meat, tender and succulent, would surely delight the master and his family. The wings, elegant and graceful, would befit the young ladies, allowing them to soar with grace and beauty. And the legs, strong and sturdy, would provide the young masters with the energy they needed to run wild and free. But what of himself? Peter chuckled to himself as he saved the bulk of the bird for his own plate. After all, he reasoned, a man must look out for himself and his own kin. As the master and his family gathered around the table, their eyes widened in delight at the sight before them. Never had they seen such a beautifully carved cockerel, each piece arranged with care and thoughtfulness. "Peter," the master exclaimed, his voice filled with admiration, "you have truly outdone yourself. This feast is fit for a king." And with that simple praise, Peter's heart swelled with pride. For in that moment, he knew that his act of cunning had not gone unnoticed, and that his future was secure. But while Peter basked in the glow of his success, a shadow fell over the heart of rich man Paul. Envy gnawed at his soul like a hungry beast, consuming him from within. How could Peter, a mere peasant, be rewarded so richly? He muttered to himself, his eyes flashing with resentment. If he can receive such praise for a single cockerel, then surely I can do the same with 5. And so, with a heart full of ambition and a head full of dreams, Paul set off to see the master, his arms laden with cockerels of his own. But alas, Paul's plan was doomed from the start. Try as he might, he could not match Peter's cunning and skill. His attempts at carving were clumsy and haphazard, his portions uneven and unappetizing. And when the master saw the sorry sight before him, his disappointment was palpable. "Paul," he sighed, shaking his head in dismay, "you have failed me. Your greed has clouded your judgment, and now you must face the consequences." And so, as Paul slunk away in shame, his dreams of riches and rewards shattered like glass, Peter could only watch with a mixture of pity and relief. For in the end, it was not wealth or status that mattered, but the goodness of one's heart and the wisdom of one's actions. Once upon a time, in a village nestled amidst verdant meadows and whispering trees, there lived a poor man and his son. The man toiled day and night, earning his bread by the sweat of his brow. But despite their hardships, they were content, for they had each other, and that was enough. One day, a kindly old man approached the poor man with an offer too good to refuse. "My son," he said, his voice as gentle as a summer breeze, "I am in need of someone to watch over my flock of sheep. Will you do me this kindness?" The poor man's heart swelled with gratitude, and he readily agreed. And so, the son set off to the old man's fields, his eyes wide with wonder at the prospect of adventure. But little did he know that he was about to embark on a journey beyond his wildest dreams. As the days passed, the son watched over the flock with care and diligence, his heart filled with a sense of purpose he had never known. But one fateful night, as the moon hung low in the sky, he made a discovery that would change his life forever. For as he gazed upon the sheep grazing in the moonlight, he saw something truly miraculous. The sheep began to shimmer and glow, their woolly coats transforming into wings of purest white. And in that moment, the son realized the truth. The sheep were not sheep at all, but angels in disguise, sent to watch over the earth and its inhabitants with love and compassion. Overwhelmed by the beauty of the sight before him, the son fell to his knees, tears of joy streaming down his cheeks. For he knew that he had been blessed with a glimpse of the divine, a gift that would stay with him for the rest of his days. But while the son basked in the glow of his newfound knowledge, a darker tale was unfolding elsewhere in the village. In a humble cottage on the edge of the forest, two sisters languished under the cruel gaze of their stepmother. Day after day, she heaped abuse upon them, her words like daggers to their tender hearts. And one fateful morning, as the sun rose in the sky and the birds sang their sweet songs of freedom, the stepmother's cruelty reached its peak. "Out!" she cried, her voice dripping with venom. "Out into the forest where you belong. I'll have no more of your nonsense in this house." And so, the two sisters were cast out into the wilderness, their hearts heavy with sorrow and fear. But little did they know that their journey was just beginning. As they wandered deeper and deeper into the forest, the elder sister, Tarushka, came up with a plan to find their way home. Gathering handfuls of grain from her pockets, she scattered them on the ground behind them, leaving a trail for them to follow. But alas, their path was not to be. For as they walked, the birds swooped down from the trees, gobbling up the grain with greedy beaks, leaving no trace of their passage behind. And so, the sisters found themselves lost and alone, their hope dwindling with each passing moment. But just when all seemed lost, a miracle occurred. As they wandered through the forest, the younger sister, her throat parched with thirst, came upon a footprint in the soft earth. And in that moment of desperation, she did the unthinkable. She drank from the footprint, hoping against hope for a taste of relief. But as the cool water trickled down her throat, something strange began to happen. Her limbs grew long and slender, her skin turned soft and fur-covered, and before her astonished eyes, she transformed into a deer, graceful and wild. And so, as the younger sister bounded off into the forest, her heart filled with newfound freedom, Tarushka was left alone to ponder her fate. But little did she know that her journey was far from over. For as she wandered through the forest, her heart heavy with sorrow and longing, she came upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. And there, standing before her, was the most handsome prince she had ever seen. "Who are you, fair maiden?" he asked, his voice like music to her ears. And in that moment, Tarushka knew that her life would never be the same again. For as she stood before the prince, her heart filled with love and longing, she knew that she had found her true destiny. And so, as the prince took her hand in his, their hearts beating as one, Tarushka knew that she had found her happily ever after. But little did she know that the greatest adventure of all was still to come. For in the days that followed, Tarushka and the prince were married in a grand ceremony, their love shining bright for all the world to see. And as they stood before their friends and family, their hearts full of hope and joy, they knew that their love would endure for all eternity. And so, as they rode off into the sunset, their hearts beating as one, they knew that their journey was far from over. For as long as they lived, they would continue to seek out adventure and excitement, their hearts filled with love and longing for the beautiful world around them. And as they rode off into the sunset, their hearts filled with love and longing, they knew that their journey was just beginning. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, a shadow fell over the palace of the king. For deep within its walls, a plot was brewing, a scheme so wicked and cunning that it threatened to tear apart the very fabric of the kingdom. At the heart of this plot stood a cook and her daughter, their hearts filled with envy and malice, for they had long dreamed of power and glory, of riches beyond their wildest imagination. And now, with a plan so devious it made the devil himself shudder, they set out to deceive the king and seize control of the kingdom for themselves. Their target? None other than Tarushka, the beloved wife of the king and mother of his son. For they knew that if they could convince the king that Tarushka had transformed into something monstrous and unnatural, they could claim the throne for themselves and rule with an iron fist. And so, with lies upon their lips and deceit in their hearts, the cook and her daughter set their plan into motion. They whispered tales of Tarushka's supposed transformation, of her descent into darkness and madness. And with each passing day, the king's suspicion grew, his once loving gaze turning cold and distant. But little did he know that Tarushka was not the monster they claimed her to be. For deep within the forest, she communed with her sister through the guise of a deer, her heart filled with longing and sorrow. And as the days stretched on, she whispered secrets of love and hope to her sister, her voice a beacon of light in the darkness. But even as Tarushka struggled to prove her innocence, the king's wrath grew ever stronger, for he believed the lies of the cook and her daughter, their words poisoning his mind like venom from a serpent's fang. And so, in a fit of rage and despair, he ordered the cook and her daughter to be brought before him, their crimes laid bare for all to see. And as they stood before the king, their faces pale with fear, justice was swift and merciless. For the king knew that he had been deceived, and he would not rest until he had righted the wrongs that had been done. And so, with a heavy heart and a determined spirit, he sought out Tarushka, his true love and queen. And as they stood together once more, their hearts entwined with love and forgiveness, they knew that their journey was far from over. For though they had faced trials and tribulations beyond imagining, they had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. And as they rode off into the sunset, their hearts filled with hope and joy, they knew that their love would endure for all eternity. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars twinkled in the night sky, all was right in the kingdom once more. For justice had been served, and love had triumphed over darkness and deceit. And as the people rejoiced and celebrated, their hearts filled with gratitude and joy, they knew that their beloved king and queen would lead them into a future filled with peace and prosperity. For in the end, it was not power or riches that mattered, but the love and compassion that bound them together as one. And as they looked to the future with hope and optimism, they knew that their kingdom would flourish under the reign of their wise and just rulers. And so, as the curtain fell on their tale of love and redemption, all was well in the land once more. For though they had faced trials and tribulations beyond imagining, they had emerged victorious, their hearts filled with love and hope for the future.